Yeah. So being on a very different page from everybody else, and that is the punishment of the dreamer. You know, it's a weird thing. Is you're absolutely right. We talk about this with regard. Like think about like little kids. We see a little kid. And how about this, for example? Everybody take a look at the ground. And what do you see? Tile. Describe it. Squares. Well, everybody else. Other people have other people see things too. What do you see? Dirt. Yeah. So you see dirt, tiles. Never mind. You guys are too old. Imagine yourself at 5 years old. Now look at the ground. What do you see? Dinosaurs? Lava. Yeah. That's why I'm standing on this cord. Because if I fall off of this cord, we're going to fall into lava. You know? And this is what little kids see. And it's a funny thing with little kids. We'll see them jumping on top of couches. Oh my God, we can't even, there's lava there. And tell them, come on, stop it, shut up, quiet. You know? And then the little kid will put on a towel or something, go running through the house claiming to be a superhero. And then we'll tell the kid, quiet, stop, you know? God, grow up. You know? And that's a horrible thing to tell a little kid, by the way. God, when are you going to grow up? You know? Because then what happens is people then grow up. Even think about little kids in school. I mean, they go to preschool, they go to first grade, second grade, right? Third grade. And then at some point, school is no longer fun, right? And think about when it happened that you stopped liking going to school, you know? And it's worth considering what happened in that time. And all of a sudden we're like, man, school sucks. You know, something happened. And I wonder if what happened was that we started to really push these things. Like, for example, right now, you're all sitting in rows. This is good. And it's good because that way you're in order. And you're all facing the most important person in the room. And if you start talking to the people around you, you start to blurt things out, I have to say, hey, stop it. Behave. Grow up. And sometimes, I mean, growing up is a good thing, but think about it in terms of what happens then. We put you in rows, we put people in rows, we tell them to grow up, stop imagining so big, stop having these big ambitions because you have to keep your feet on the ground. And then what happens is somebody comes along, I hate using Steve Jobs because he didn't create a goddamn thing, but someone will come along like a Steve Jobs and or they have it like an Elon Musk, and then we'll say, man, that person's amazing, they've got such amazing creativity and imagination. How did they get that? You know? And I think what you're going to find is that creative geniuses are simply just children who survive childhood to an extent. But that's also what makes it difficult to work with them. You ever try working with a little kid to get stuff done? You know, it's damn near impossible because they won't stay focused. They're always just kind of playing around. And that's a good thing for them. But it's a great thing for creativity. It's not such a great thing for order. And this is why what you'll find a lot of times is that we'll find somebody who's a creative genius, and then they're going to have that second person who you've never heard of before. And that's because the creative genius comes up with the idea, and it's all over the place, and then that other person is the one who sits there and says, all right, we'll make it happen. That's your kind of nuts and bolts person who says, all right, we'll make, so you want a phone that works as a phone but also connects to the internet and does all that stuff? Yeah, it's going to be amazing. Okay. All right, so we'll take this to the actual engineers and the actual designer, we'll take the actual designers, we'll take it to the people who know what they're doing to put this together. And then Steve Jobs gets to stand out there and say, my idea. Yeah, his idea, in a sense, but he didn't come up with the actual nuts and bolts of making it work. You know? But that's the thing, is that we really like that person who's able to come up with the ideas. Of course, part of the problem is that if you're coming out with new ideas and you're a trailblazer, by definition what that means is that you're coming up with all kinds of new things, most of which are not going to work. Follow? In other words, you think about, I was mentioning before about Sigmund Freud, that the guy came up with all kinds of really off-the-wall ideas. And, and today, we remember him largely for his messed up ideas. I think I was mentioning what some of them were. But that's because the ideas that were right, we don't even realize that they came from him because they're so deeply embedded in our culture. The idea that your unconscious mind affects your present behavior. The things that happened to you when you were a little kid shaped you and made you into what you are today. And that your anxieties and your other neuroses are directly connected to trauma and things that you suffered when you were a little kid. We just take that for granted now. But it comes from Freud. And so we remember people for like this big, massive things that, oh my gosh, they believe these really stupid things. Yeah, but that's because when you're a trailblazer, when you're coming up with new ideas, you're coming up with stuff that you don't know if there's an answer to it. You know, it's like when we're doing like literature, doing philosophy, for example, we used to say that if philosophy was easy, it would be rocket science. Because rocket science, at least you know there's an answer to it. You know? In other words, you know that, okay, well, you know, mathematically, is this going to work? Yeah, we just got to find the math that makes it work. With philosophy or with art, you don't know if there's an endpoint to it. You don't know if it's going to work. You don't know if there's an answer. You have to kind of go out there and then see if there's an answer. And how do you know when you found the answer? How do you even know what path to go on? It's a very difficult thing to do. Because at the end of all of it, at the end of a lifetime of work, you just don't know if you're going to be successful. And so it takes a heck of a lot of courage, or stupidity, or whatever the combination therein is, to go forward into something without knowing if there's going to be an end. I mean, that's a lot of the things with life, right? Like you undergo a situation, and you know, maybe you're in trouble in some way, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't care how it ends, I just want it to end. And you're just hoping for the ending of it all. You know? That way it's just over and done with. You know, some of us think that way with school. Some of us think that way with problems. Some of us think that way with the growing aspect of things. Some of us think that way with heartache. And this is what Nietzsche would say, is that this is problematic, because rather than just kind of saying, oh, I just want to skip over all this suffering and get to the end and start to heal, like Nietzsche would say, you've got to go through that suffering, and that's the suffering that will get you to the end. But that way the suffering is going to be worthwhile. It's going to matter in some way, because it's going to make you stronger and better. So that when you get to the end and you go on with the rest of your life, you're going forward as a stronger person, not someone who just jumped over those steps. So as he also says, as he grows, he jumps over steps that no step forgives him. Meaning that if you jump over the things in life that make you grow, then you're going to lose those opportunities to become better. And then it's just wasted time. You know, like I was talking about, I don't remember if it was in this class, but I was saying that I'm sure you all have classes that you absolutely have hated, and that have not been interesting or boring you, just despise going there. You know, think about what the difference between what you got out of the class was and what it could have been if you instead had embraced it and said, well, you know what, it's terrible, but I'm going to get something out of it today. What? I don't know. A joke, something funny, a conversation with somebody in class, it's going to help me grow in some way. Maybe the teacher is going to say something that I can use in some way, find a way to hear something and use it. In other words, if you approach these negative situations in life with this perspective of, I'll get something out of it, then you can grow from it, you know. But if we don't know what that end point is, if we don't know how that is, it's difficult to get there. This is the thing with the artist. When the artist is painting, how does the artist ever know if they're going to be successful? You know, we're talking about Monet recently. You know, the dude just didn't know if he was going to be successful or not. You know, very few artists do know they're going to be successful. So why do they do it? Because they have to. You know, there's something inside of the artist that says, I have to create this thing. You know? I was telling you guys about Bukowski, right? The writer Bukowski, his gravestone that says, don't try. Yeah, don't try. If I can tell, students come to me like, oh, I want to study philosophy. I always say the same thing, don't do it. And I really mean it, by the way. I'm not just, I don't do reverse psychology. I think it's terribly disrespectful towards people to use reverse psychology on them. It essentially treats people like little playthings, and you're trying to trick them into doing things. It's terribly disrespectful to use that, I think, just towards a person's humanity. So I'll never do that to them. If I tell you, man, don't do it, I really mean that. You know, if you study philosophy, it's going to mess with your head. You're going to go through school, you're going to get a degree at the end, and then you're going to look back and go, well, what do I do with this piece of paper? I'll tell you what you do with that piece of paper. Nothing. You know, I think mine is in my closet somewhere. I don't even know what I do with it. Someone gave me a really cool frame to put it in. This wooden thing, like a $200 frame. I was like, wow, put it in there. And I think it's sitting in my closet somewhere. I should find it. It is a cool frame, but I should find something useful to do with it. because the piece of paper at the end, I don't take that philosophy degree and say, can I have a job? Any more than I take my literature degree somewhere and ask, can I have a job? Except teach, I suppose. But even then, I don't even need those degrees to teach. I could have studied math and then passed an English test and become an English teacher. It would have been, much harder. But the point is, what do you get for that? Well, you get understanding, you get knowledge, you get a way of seeing the world that hopefully makes all the suffering of life, the tragedy of life worthwhile. That's what you get out of it. And what do you get out of a literature degree? It's not the degree, it's the reading all along the way. Because the person who reads a lot, the person who studies literature knows something unique and special, and it's this: that one lifetime is not enough to do all of the things that you want to do in life. The person who reads a lot knows that one lifetime is not enough to do all of the things that you want to do in life. I read Nietzsche, so I understand Nietzsche. I have lived Nietzsche's life. I've read Voltaire. I know Voltaire. I've lived Voltaire's life. I've lived Wilde's life. I've lived Eliot's life. All these people who I've read, I've lived Pater's life. You've lived their lifetimes. You've seen the world through their eyes. And their whole life, their whole collection of experiences go into these stories, and you can sit there and look at it and say, wow, I just added another 40 or 50 years to my life by living this person's life experiences. And then that next person's life experiences. And then the next person's life experiences. And you can see how you can add thousands and thousands of years to this brief interval of life that you have. When you're reading those stories, do you know what the end is going to be? It's not about the end. We always hear that hippie stuff, right? It's not about the end, it's about the journey. But it is true to an extent. What do you do with a degree? I don't know. What do you do with the knowledge that you get on the way to earning that degree? Man, I can tell you all about that. That's worthwhile stuff. And so the dreamer understands this. The dreamer understands that they find their way by the moonlight because you don't know what the end point is. Many of you ever been out to like the desert or someplace far away from cities, and there's only moonlight? That is dark, man. Even now, if you go to like Cowles Mountain, you might be like, oh wow, it's so dark up here. No, the city is right beneath you. If you get away from the city, you see how dark it really gets out there with no light, and even by moonlight. So yeah, you've got a little bit of something to guide you as you're moving, but it's not much. And that's because you don't know if there's an end point to it. You don't know if you're walking, you could walk into a mountain, because you literally cannot see more than 10, 15 feet in front of you, if that, if the moon is full, if it's a full moon. And so the dreamer does that, but the dreamer goes forward anyway. The dreamer doesn't sit back and go, it's just safer if we stay here, because the dreamer has to go forward. That's what the dreamer does. The same way that Bukowski says to you, don't try. Same thing with the dreamer. Don't dream. But I have to. I appreciate your advice. I know you want to keep me safe. If your parents are telling you, or your counselors are telling you, have a plan B, have a fallback plan. Whatever that thing is you want to do. If you want to be an artist, but you know how hard it is to be an artist. You have to have a fallback plan. I'm sure you've heard this before. I wonder if any of you have ever gone to your parents or your counselor and told them that you want to be a surgeon. And they've said, that's really great, but you've got to have a fallback plan. Because being a surgeon is difficult. You ever hear that from people? People usually say, wow, you want to be a surgeon, you want to be a lawyer, that's awesome, you should go for that. Actually, I want to get a guitar and rock the world. That's really hard to do. You should have a fallback plan. We're both really out there in terms of dreaming. Granted, it's more difficult maybe to make it in the music industry, but the point is the same. We shouldn't turn away from things just because they're difficult, just because we don't know the end. Of course, the problem is if you venture out ahead of everybody else, what do you see before everybody else? What's coming tomorrow? And who's going to believe you? No one. No one. This is one of the problems about getting age and getting experience. And you're all going to find this. I mean, you guys are going to find this like in the next couple of years. I'm not talking like, when you're 35 years old, you're going to find out. No. Like, you're going to talk to people who are like in fact, you may be even doing it right now. You may talk to people who are like in 6th grade or in junior high and try to give them advice, and they're like, whatever. You're going to be like, dude, I've been there. I'm only a few years older than you. Whatever. You know? I have students who visit me, and I mean, they graduated like last year, or the year before last, or the year before that. They'll come in here and they'll watch, you know, students in here, and they'll be like shaking their heads like, man, what's wrong with them? And I'm going to say, nothing that wasn't wrong with you when you were here. Nothing that wasn't wrong with me when I sat in those exact same chairs. It's what we do sometimes. You know? But just like you read people so that you can know their lifetime, it's a good idea to listen to older people as well, people who have experience, not just because they're older, but because they have experience, because they've done things. You know, remember, that's the hero's journey, right? You go out, you do stuff, and then you survive it. You come back and you tell everybody about it so that it's instructive. It's the same idea with your life. You know, your advice is worth something if you've lived something, if you've lived those extra lifetimes, that you can come back and tell someone, you know, all jacked up, shirt torn, you know, one shoe, you know, missing a sock, and be like, all right, let me warn you about something, okay? If you go out that door, there's going to be tigers and all that. That doesn't mean you shouldn't venture out there. It just means be aware of what's out there, you know? And what will happen a lot of times is you're going to find is that people are going to shrug their shoulders and go, whatever, man. And it's going to be heartbreaking because you're going to be like, I've been there. I've done this. I'm trying to save you. I'm trying to save you heartbreak. I'm trying to save you. And then you'll always have that person who says, I got to make my mistakes on my own. My God, why? You know? Does that same person walk out there and find like berries hanging from a tree and go, I wonder if those are poisonous. Got to make my own mistakes, right? You know? You ever been hit by a bus before? Then how do you know it's going to kill you? Got to make my own mistakes. Step out into Highland. You know? In other words, we seem to choose those kinds of things. And isn't it funny that we say things like, I want to make my own mistakes at the times when the mistake we're about to make is really fun. You know, we think it's going to be fun. You know, it's like, oh, I need, don't, when I fill in the blank there, I got to make my own mistakes. No, it just means you want to experience that thing and have fun, which is fine. How about, but wouldn't it be so much better if we just clarified ourselves? You know, don't do drugs. But they sound like a lot of fun. You know, are they fun? I imagine so. You know, does that mean you shouldn't do them? I'm not saying you should. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm not saying anything about that at all. You know. You know, I gotta ask you, how many, I mean, just to kind of consider it within your head, how many people do you know who are alcoholics and have damaged their lives and the lives of others around them? How many people do you know who are on cocaine and on heroin, and use, especially heroin, and use these things recreationally? Oh, once or twice a year. You know, it's not common. You find that these are things that people fall into these spirals of, and so it might be a good idea to stay away from them. You know, especially if you look in your family and you see a bunch of alcoholism, it might be a good idea to stay away from alcohol, because that might mean that there's something genetic in you that's going to predispose you to becoming addicted to it. And do you really want to live your life subject to a substance? Not only does it get expensive, but of course it gets destructive as well to everybody around you. Not to mention your own life, and you've just got this one. You know? And so it might be worth considering that. But then again, maybe you're sitting and hearing me say that and saying, sorry, Scanlon, I gotta make my own mistakes and just do a rail that's as long as this building right here. You know? Maybe. You know? But the point is that the dreamer is the person who sets out ahead, sees what tomorrow looks like, comes back and wants to report it to us, and that's the punishment. No one's going to listen to you, man. No one's going to listen to you. Very few people will listen to you. No matter how truthful it is, no matter how powerful it is, no matter what you come back with. You know, people, the world just won't listen. And that's a punishment. Does that mean you shouldn't do it, though? I don't know. That's going to be for each person to decide for themselves. You know, which life do you want? And so, you notice that he makes it sound very romantic, but he does hit you at the end with the truth, and that's an important thing. You should hear the truth. Are drugs fun? Nah. I know a lot of people who have a lot of fun doing them, man. But I also know a lot of people, I mean, most of my friends from high school are dead, in jail, or in rehab. I also know a lot of people who went too far on those things. At what point do you know that it's too far and not? I don't know, man. Is it worth finding out? I don't know. And by the way, I really mean that. I don't know. That's one of the reasons I've told you I don't do drugs. Because I know myself. If I did drugs, I would do all of them. If I drank alcohol, I would drink all of it. I know my personality type. And it's worth considering if you're that person who's like, I can control it. What's your data point? In other words, what in your life makes you think you're so disciplined that you can control that? Do you get your homework done on time? When you're sitting in this class, can you sit there and get your work done without trying to copy off the person next to you, or without just filling in bullshit because you're trying to get it done? Are you disciplined enough to do that? Because that's not even biological, that's not even physiological, that's just behavioral. And if we can't control those kinds of things, then maybe we should look at the other things in our life that we can't control. It's not saying you shouldn't do those things, I'm just saying figure out what you can control and why. And then maybe build yourself up that way so that you can control things in your life. I guess what I'm saying is clean your room. Right? Questions? Comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Don't forget, February 21st, these are due, so a week from this coming Friday. I missing anybody? Oh, jeez. I gotta bleep your name out of the video. All right, go ahead and put those away and take out your stuff from last time.